Hello chess friends and welcome to your of Chess channel and welcome to a spectacular game that has been played by the latest version of Stockfish, the powerful Stockfish 16. Today we see the fish battling it out against another top engine, Koivisto, in an amazing Caro-Kann Defense opening, and this game is so crazy, so wild, so spectacular. It's not one of those, I don't know, positional Caro-Kann defenses that we see many times. This one is really an epic, sharp, tactical game between the two top engines, so in my opinion, one of the best Caro-Kann Defense chess games that I've seen in my life. So if you have followed my YouTube chess channel, you probably know that we have started recently a new series on my YouTube chess channel, the Caro-Kann Defense, from whites and from blacks perspective. So here's the link of the playlist. You can check out this amazing chess opening. I think you can have great preparation in the Caro-Kann. So of course this game will be also added into the playlist of this opening. So let's start now with the game. Put your seatbelts on and enjoy, as I said, in really beautiful but also brutal game here by Stockfish 16. So with the white pieces, the fish open with the move e4. We have c6 by the Koivisto chess engine. We have d4, d5. We have knight to d2, and after d takes e4, knight to e4. We're now in the classical variation of the Caro-Kann defense, and now after move h4, we're in the main line. Now comes h6, creating of course breathing spaces for the light square bishop, and now many things can be played. In my honest opinion, the best approach here by white is to play knight to f3, because this move knight to f3 keeps you a certain flexibility in the game. You have still options with the h-pawn. You can of course control further the g5 square. Nothing wrong also with the h5 immediately, but I'm more of a fan of this particular line when we played after knight to f3, knight to f6, knight to e5 immediately. So we gain the same idea. The bishop has to again retreat here to h7, but as I said, we're at least controlling further this structure here. We have a better flexibility, I think, in the game when you play this line. So Stockfish continues with bishop to d3, but I wanted to show you also, because we're studying really now the Caro-Kann in a deeper way. I wanted to show you an interesting line. For instance, if we play bishop to c4 immediately instead of bishop to d3, we're hitting the pawn on f7. There is now a tricky line that black could play after move e6. Now we play something like queen to e2, and the tricky part is that actually this would be a trap. For instance, if queen takes d4 happens, then we have this resource. Knight takes f7 is winning the game immediately. Very, very wild stuff. After something like king to f7, we hit the pawn on e6, and I think this game is over here for black. So that's why after move queen to e2, black should play here knight to d5, but again we're setting up a new trap. We're playing here to move bishop to d2. If for instance bishop takes c2 happens, then we play this one, rook to c1. The bishop has to retreat. We hit now the pawn on f7. Black is trying to cover now the f-file, but now we play queen to b3. We're hitting now this diagonal and also the weak pawn on b7. If for instance queen to c7 happens, then we have again spectacular tactics around the square e6. Bishop takes e6, f takes e6, queen to e6, and I guarantee you black will not have fun in this particular game. So as I said, instead of this move bishop takes c2, black could of course play here knight to d7, which is much better, and then the game continues with queenside castling, knight to e5, f takes e5, queen to c7, f4 has been played, and I think both sides have good chances in the game. Black has this powerful knight on d5, white has this progressive ideas on the king side, but actually black should then castle out of this king side attack, should simply castle here. Queen side has been played many times with also good success for white, for black, many drawish games. So in my opinion, this is the way to go also here for black. So let's go back. Instead of this move bishop to c4, as I said, Stockfish plays now the move bishop to d3. Here if you play again queen takes d4, then knight takes f7 is a tricky idea. King to f7, this one is winning the game. So again, black doesn't have time to pick up the pawn on d4. We have bishop to d3, queen to d3 here by Stockfish, e6, and now bishop to d2. We have talked about this whole bishop to d2 idea in our previous analysis of the Caro-Kann defense. This move is very important because, for instance, what you could try maybe is to play more aggressively with bishop to f4, but then you risk this idea, bishop to b4. You're getting a check. You have to cover now with c3. Black retreats, of course, but now queenside castling is not the same with or without playing the move c3. Now, with the move c3, you have already weakened your structure in front of the king. You have already provoked some light square weaknesses in front of your own king. So this, I'm not saying it's completely busted or something, but it's a worst continuation for white, so white should not allow this dangerous check by the bishop. So that's why Stockfish plays bishop to d2, anticipates this move bishop to b4, and doesn't have to play anymore. Now the move c3, this move is of course also preventing the move queen to a5, which would basically do the same. So bishop to e7 here by Koivisto, Stockfish castles queenside, knight to d7, and now f4. We want, of course, here from white's perspective, cement our position around the only piece that's on our opponent's side of the board. It's, of course, the e5 knight. And whenever we have a certain space advantage, and we want to support the spaces that we gained, and that's why very important move now to play the move f4. The issue for black is here is that you cannot take out the knight immediately. Maybe later, but not in this particular position, because after f takes e5, the knight would have to retreat. Now we hit the knight retreats. Now we hit the pawn on g7. You have to play g6. Now we retreat. Even if you pick up the pawn, look at this. Knight to e4 is going to happen. f6 weak, d6 weak. Bishop is hanging. You retreat with the bishop. h6 is weak. So, in my opinion, game over already here for black. So, many dirty things you see can happen in an early stage of the game if you don't play the sidelines correctly. So that's why after move f4, Koivisto leaves the position like this, plays simply kingside castling. Stockfish continues with queen to f3, gets out of the d file, because now maybe later after potential trades of knights, the d file could be open, and then maybe white would risk then to trade off the queens. And when you are on the attacking side, you don't want to, of course, simplify the game for your opponent. So that's why good choice here by Stockfish to play out of the attack. So queen to c7 now by Koivisto. We have c4 controlling the d5 square, rook to e8, and now bishop to c3. A certain theoretical novelty, but I think this is nothing spectacular. This is simply a natural move that you play with the bishop. But actually, this move bishop to c3 seems dangerous, but actually becomes also a certain problem, I would say, also for white, because now Koivisto will try to launch an queenside attack and will try to kick away the bishop here with moves like b4 if it's possible. And although, as I said, there's always double-edged, idea for both sides. Whenever you play an attacking move, there's a certain also counter-attack possibility here for black. So bishop to c3, very aggressive, but as I said, becomes also an object of black's attack. Rook from a to d8, king to b1, improving now the position of the king. We have bishop to f8, rook to d2, and now after move a5, as I said, b5, b4, very dangerous stuff. And Stockfish plays now a move that I would never play. I would not even, suggested someone to play. But Stockfish plays now the amazing a3. And I thought, dude, what the hell is this? Why would anyone weaken the structure further in front of his own king? Because b5, b4 is obviously coming. But Stockfish has really a nice defensive setup here in mind. Look at this. After move rook to c8, here Koivisto is controlling first of all the c6 pawn, because Koivisto is trying now to play the move b5. Stockfish plays now the amazing rook to d3. Stockfish found a beautiful defensive setup to anticipate this move b4 that's obviously coming. So here b5 by Koivisto. Stockfish plays now the move c5, and if Koivisto would have, for instance, played the move in b4, this wasn't played in the game. In the game, knight to d5 was played. But let's see options. Sometimes in this opposite side attack games, when the kings are on opposite sides, we're trying even to sacrifice some material just in order, to open here the a file, to open the b file. This would be, I think, one of the good progressive plans, playing the move b4, but actually white doesn't have to react. And that's the beauty about this move rook to d3 that Stockfish played. Now after something like b takes a3, rook takes a3 would happen, and look at this, the knight on d7, the bishop on f8 are simply out of the game. They cannot be activated in the further attack here on the queen side. The d4 c5 structure is not allowing these pieces to somehow attack white's king. So maybe you could build a b file attack, but nothing spectacular. I think we can even play in some lines rook to a2 if necessary, protecting maybe the b2 pawn. So really nice defensive idea here on the queen side by Stockfish 16. So that's why after move c5 here that Stockfish plays, Koivisto played, of course, knight to d5, getting use of this amazing square now for the knight, the amazing d5 square. Bishop to d2, b4 comes anyway, and Stockfish passes through a4. Very important defensive move, because now the a file and the b file are locked. so there's simply no way that the heavy artillery of blacks will somehow come into the game. There's simply no good progress anymore on the queen side, and with this move a4, Stockfish is almost saying now, I've solved all of the positional problems now on the queen side. Let's go now to my side on the board. You had your fun a little bit, but now I will have my fun here on this side of the board. So now no problems on the queen side, and from this point on it becomes really a brutal sharp attack by Stockfish 16. So we have here rook from c to d8. Stockfish continues immediately with a tiny little threat, with a simple threat, but at least he's provoking already his opponent here with the move queen to h5. Knight to f6, queen to f3. Again Koivisto retreats. Stockfish tries another move, knight to h5, hitting the pawn on g7. We have f6, knight to c4. What should black do? One of the lines, believe me or not, that Stockfish is actually suggesting here is to sack even the bishop on c5. Really wild stuff. Look at this. After d takes c5, knight to c5, you have to retreat. We pick up this one. The Stockfish engine evaluates this position as a +1 in white's favor, but really an interesting line for sure. You're giving up material, but at least the files are again open in front of white's king. But as I said, okay, knight to c, this would be risky to take it out. Koivisto played the more progressive idea with the move e5. Is of course also threatening here the move e4, getting the fork against the queen and the rook. We have here now f takes e5, f takes e5, rook to f1, hitting the weak square on f7, and now rook to e7 here by Koivisto, protecting the f7 square. Stockfish continues with knight to g3, is of course trying to reroute the knight on f5 and then to hit the rook on e7, and now Koivisto makes maybe its first inaccuracy in the game, plays now the move king to h8. Maybe unnecessary. Actually, what Koivisto maybe should have done is this line, e takes d4, then after something like knight to f5, knight takes c5, you're giving up the exchange, but I think this could be maybe playable for black. After something like, I don't know, queen to f7, you get a step back with the king. At least you have something here. You are down the exchange, but we have to say you have also here 4 versus 2 pawn majority. You have powerful knights that are attacking. The rook is also hanging here. In my opinion, this would be a decent compensation for the lost exchange. Again, the Stockfish engine likes more white's position. Stockfish says this is defendable, but it would be also very interesting to see this line. Instead of this move e takes d4, as we said, king to h8 was played by Koivisto, and this wasn't good because now Stockfish had simply enough time to get this knight on e4. So black didn't play any threats, and now with knight to e4, obviously the d6 square is now really weak, and of course both of these knights and the pawn are controlling the square, so this becomes now the main weakness in black's camp. So we have e takes d4 by Koivisto. Stockfish plays now an amazing bishop to g5. Really wild stuff. Forces basically here black to play the move knight to f6, because if you play here h takes g5, then after h takes g5, obviously the h file is now open and the king is endangered here. Now you could maybe try to get out of this mess. Probably white would continue with rook to h1. This wasn't playing the game, but I wanted to show really how dangerous this attack can be on the h file if you would have, for instance, taken the bishop on g5. Then after rook to h1, maybe knight to f4, you're controlling h3 and h5, not allowing the queen to come into the attack. But now after knight to d6, the queen gets disconnected from the knight on f4. You can maybe try some tactics with knight to c5. We pick up simply the knight. You can also pick up this one. But now look at this. With rook to h3, we don't have to even retreat with the queen. You pick up the queen, and now you get even checkmated with rook to h8. The knight on d6 is controlling the f7 square. Really wild stuff. Of course, black and white doesn't have to play this line like this, but it would be very interesting to see how Koivisto would have defended this move after bishop to g5 and h takes g5. So that's why from bishop to g5, Koivisto calculated probably the dirty ideas here by Stockfish. Plays now the move knight to f6, and Stockfish continues now with the move knight to d6. Knight takes f6 is also possible. Knight takes f6, bishop to f6, but it can be defended with bishop to g7. So Stockfish says this is not enough for me. Stockfish plays the better move, knight to d6. Cements simply the position around this amazing square. We have rook to e6, bishop takes f6 now by Stockfish. We have g takes f6, and now queen to g4. Getting use of all of the slide squares that Stockfish provoked now, and hitting, of course, also the rook on e6 forces now here Koivisto to play the defensive move again, queen to e7. Stockfish continues with rook takes d4. We have rook to e5 and now queen to g6, again putting more pressure against the pawn on f6. We have rook to d7 and Stockfish plays another stunner. Stockfish plays now the amazing rook takes d5. This is the way to go. Really wild stuff. After rook takes d5, Stockfish takes out now the pawn on f6. We have queen to e6 and now h5. The problem for black here is that you cannot really get rid of this really most annoying knight on d6 because actually you get checkmated. The bishop would be then deflected from the defense of the pawn on h6. This is not working. So after move h5, that's why rook to g5 was played by Koivisto, and now Stockfish plays another stunning, beautiful, sharp tactic. Plays now the amazing knight to d7, sacrificing simply the queen. After rook to g6, knight to f8, we have queen to b3, and now Stockfish takes out now the rook on g6. Has now two minor pieces and the rook for the queen, but still I think it's a long run to say that this is winning. But let's see now how Koivisto handled this particular position. Koivisto of course has to retreat. Stockfish plays now rook to e1. We have queen to d3, first a check, rook king to a1, queen to b3, and now g4. Really good move here by Stockfish. What should black do? For instance, if you play queen to a4, this wasn't playing the game, but queen to c2 was played. But let's see, of course, options. If you play queen to a4, okay, you have your fun with the check and you're trying maybe something like b3. This is not working because actually after a couple of checks and the activation of the knight, you can deliver maybe a couple of checks, but actually white king can escape. Look at this. White king has a clear path how to get out of this mess, and even if you sack somehow the piece, this one comes with a check, and now even if you try to push the pawns, you can get even checkmated by two knights and the king's activity. So this, again, I'm pointing out, doesn't have to be played like this, but I wanted to show one line that actually even taking the pawn here on a4 is not such a great option because you can never really deliver checkmate. White has, as I said, first of all, the clear path for the king, and the knights are always good defenders for the king. So even if you deliver a couple of checks, white king will simply get somehow on the 6th rank, and then when the rook is included into the attack, then again it would be probably game over here for black. So that's why not working. So after move g4, that's why queen to c2. We have knight to e7, king to h7, knight to g6, king to g8, rook to e8, new check, a new check by the fish, a couple of perpetuals, and now rook to e1 again by fish. So here Stockfish didn't also find immediately the best solution of this particular endgame. Queen to f2, rook to e8, new check, king to d7, knight to f5, we have king to f6, knight to e3, queen to d2, and now king to a2. Again, Stockfish is searching for opportunities to get also somehow the king into the attack. We have b3 here by Koivisto, king takes b3, queen to b4, queen to c5, hitting now. Again, Stockfish is trying to run away, and after king to f8, in this particular position, the Koivisto chess engine resigned. So let's see options. If you play king to g7, then the issue is this one. You get after a couple more moves even a checkmate. If you step back here to e6 after move rook to f8, if you step back to e6, then after a couple of checks, again, black's king will be simply neutralized by all of these pieces, and after a couple more moves, eventually we will get our king into the game. So again, with the same pattern, getting is somehow, as I said, probably this game would be played for more 10-20 moves, but I think we can agree this is completely busted here for black. So really great game. We have seen bishop sacrifices, exchange sacrifices, queen sacrifices, pawn breakthrough motifs. Great opening theory, great defensive ideas with this move rook to d3, a3, controlling the queen side, paralyzing, neutralizing its opponent attack, then changing the game, attacking the king side. This was simply a brutal game here by Stockfish 16. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. Interesting ideas of the main line of the classical variation of the Caro-Kann Defense. As I said, if you're interested more into this amazing chess opening, please check out our series so far. Here's the link of the playlist, and if you want to see more brutal Stockfish games and also some other top engine games, check out our commented chess games played by computer series. Here's the link also of the playlist, and if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.